That's true. Yeah, it was kind of funny. Benjamin showed me the image. I had no idea what I was looking at. I was like, "Is this new? Is this old? I don't know what that even is." But apparently, it made the rounds. Did a lot of social media.
God, I actually feel sorry for them.
Yeah,
I
I do
do.
too.
It and
A little
it's
bit.
just like the age of privacy really is over when you have to worry about that. I just
Maybe that's where the topic can get fleshed out, is this whole privacy, lack
Mm-hmm.
of privacy with social media and with all of these other ways that people are like instantly, can connect. And I don't know, maybe that's a bigger umbrella that we can bring into it as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just going
interesting.
to post today that
Interesting
there,
point.
there's going to be digital IDs in Mexico starting in 2026. Like, so yeah, these moves towards
Yes.
surveillance, ID, the CBDCs, the currency that might be tracked, whatever.
yeah. That's really kind of scary. Christine, by the way, your hair looks fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I actually curled it. I haven't done that in a long time, but thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So welcome to those who have joined us. It's Monday, July 21st. It's Solid Ground live stream. Hi, student of rhythm. Nice to see you today. And right before we came on, we were just discussing the now infamous infidelity scandal with the CEO dude and the HR lady. I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this, but just to recap, Coldplay concert, Kiss Cam. I guess it was the singer who was scanning around and making little comments about the audience members, and the camera landed on this couple who were locked in a really affectionate embrace. And as soon as they saw themselves on camera, they made shocked, horrified faces. The guy ducked down, and the girl turned around. And turns out it was two people who were each married to other people, a CEO of a company and his head of HR. And now the big joke is that Coldplay just dropped two new singles. Yeah. Yeah.
That's terrible.
I know it is
That's
terrible,
terrible.
but it's really it's interesting how watching the response to that. I saw on Twitter over the weekend there was a post. Somebody posted this picture of this really beautiful young woman with three little kids and said, "This is the guy's actual wife, and why is he out with this old woman?" Turns out that wasn't his wife. That's some influencer. It's some young woman from some other thing. But
Okay.
but all of the outcry over that was kind of interesting in and of itself. It's like spurs lots of, like, you could talk about privacy, you could talk about infidelity, you could talk about what justifies infidelity. Like the people who were, how is he out with this old woman when he's got this gorgeous woman at home? Like the attractiveness of your wife either justifies or makes worse the act of infidelity is kind of interesting to see
Yeah,
some of that.
that
But
is interesting.
yeah, yeah.
There was
Hi, Dave.
also, but I don't know if it ended up being false. There was a seeming apology tweet by him, but then people were saying no, that wasn't really him. But at least the one that was first propagated had the total formulaic, "I will do better," like the typical post like woke attack languaging. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know if he actually wrote that or that was some fake thing people were sending around, making him sound like he just had a struggle session.
Interesting. Yeah, infidelity is a big thing. I mean, it's interesting. There's so much commentary online. It's fascinating to watch. It's like watching a divorce where people are arguing, but it's everybody. Like the men versus the women, the male feminists versus the pick me's, the red pill guys versus the radical feminists. We don't need men, women, and all of the and everything in between.
You know, what's interesting is we have in California, some cities and counties have red light camera. If you run a red light, the camera will take a photo of you right in the car and your license plate, and it'll get mailed to your house. And somebody sued. This was several years ago because it was a man that was driving with a woman. It turns out he's having an affair with this woman, and the red light camera caught them, and it got sent to the man's home. The wife opened up the ticket and saw pictures of the two of them together. They went to court and ended up finding that it was unconstitutional to have those cameras, and
Wow.
overturned only in LA County. There's still other counties in California who have them, but very, very few. So that was really stunning. But yeah, that was a really interesting case several years ago.
That is really interesting. So it kind of feels like we have no rights to any privacy, but maybe there's a privacy right to having an affair. I don't really
Yeah,
understand what I'm supposed to
right,
take from that.
right, right.
Hmm.
Well, it's interesting too because they installed those things in part, I believe, because there was this racial element, right? Like, oh, people are getting pulled over because they're this race looking or whatever, and so this was supposed to be a neutral way. Like, we don't
Yeah,
know what you
yeah,
are. We're just going to know. And I think it was still sort of disproportionately racially, like who was still getting the tickets.
yes,
But at least a piece of it was to try to address what they thought was, being caused by bias.
yes. That's
Hmm.
interesting because it
Yeah.
hasn't really, and that it hasn't, and now it's like if you get the ticket and you don't in other counties and you don't address it, you just kind of let it be. Some counties won't go after you. They just let it be as long as you don't respond to it. So it's very weird. I don't think it accomplished what they were looking to accomplish. It just made the city a lot of money for a little while because those tickets are like $500.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's not a cheap infraction. So um, yeah, it's interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, I know, kind of getting back to the comments about the attractiveness of the wife, that was sort of interesting to me to see how many people were more aghast when they thought he had a pretty wife at home that he would be out
Hmm.
with. But that's so often, I mean, an affair is not about, it's not about the person that you're cheating on. It's about something going
Hmm.
on either in the
That's right.
relationship or with the individual doing the cheating.
Didn't Beyonce get cheated on?
Yeah. I mean, didn't she
I
write a whole
mean,
album about that?
yeah, come on. Like, that's not. I think this comes from this sort of illusion that if you just look good enough, you can keep your man. And I think that
Yeah.
women have sort of coached other women in that belief for years, grandmothers, mothers, daughters, as a way of attempting to gain control over the uncontrollable. And it just simply isn't true. Stunningly gorgeous people are cheated on, extremely nice people are cheated on. Oh, sorry, there's work going
Yeah.
on in my building.
Oh,
If you heard that loud sound,
it just sounds like
I'm
a
gonna go on
hum.
my balcony.
There's your
Yeah, I'm
dog.
gonna go on my balcony because this is gonna continue, I think. So, yeah, I just I don't think that there's any kind of way that you can guarantee that you're not going to be cheated on. And also, people who are judging it, they don't know. Maybe these people are in absolutely miserable marriages and they're trying everything to work it out. And they felt disconnected from their partner for years and they felt lonely. And now they're feeling connected and alive again, finally. You just don't know.
Hmm. David
Not that I'm
LeBoy.
making excuses for that because it's a terrible betrayal, but I just
Mhm.
think that it's often more complicated than we think.
I want to hear
Hmm.
more from David LeBoy. He says once again
I would.
misunderstanding the nature of male sexuality. So tell us more about that, David. What are your thoughts on that? Go ahead, Christine. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I was pointing to that same, I was going to point out that same comment and see if David would maybe expand on it. So we literally had the same thought at the same time. So that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you, Brandon, for the haircut compliment. That's nice. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. The last time my ex cheated on me, and there were a few times. The last time, it was just this really kind of young but heavy set, very plain woman that I'm not going to disparage her. I'm not going to. It wouldn't be worth doing. She was a normal looking person. Let me just say she was a normal looking person. She wasn't sexy, she wasn't pretty, she was just a person. And I by that point I was pretty numb to that, and that wasn't a big shock to me. That you would just think that attraction to a human would play a bigger role, but there's something really, it's complex, but there's a lot of reasons why a person makes that choice, and it doesn't have to be that they were drawn to some femme fatale, but there does seem to be that I guess we have that perception, and it was reflected in those internet comments, that if someone is really beautiful, well, how could you blame someone for being tempted into that? If there's this kind of idea of the window dressing, and then they were compelled, so it's excusable almost if the person that they cheated on you with was irresistible somehow. But it's more complicated
And I
than
think
that.
I think it is, because I think part of it too is the ways that women view sex versus the ways that men view sex. Okay, it's like, I don't want to make a stereotype here, but I'm just going to make a stereotype just for the sake of argument. This idea that, women connect to it than what men do. That's not necessarily the case for every woman. So I'm not trying to, bucket everybody, but it's like, what does it mean? Is it just a physical act, or does it have some emotional connection that needs to be there for you to have sex with your partner? What does sex mean in a relationship? What does it mean when you're single? What does it mean when you're married, dating? I mean, I think there's a
Yes.
lot of complexity to that question in and of itself. What men, oh, I'm sorry, let's read this more than anything. Feel like they're wanted. It's
Yeah,
a big part of why men
we'll
cheat.
read it out
Yeah, yeah.
loud. Brandon Bergian says, "What men want more than anything is to feel like they're wanted." I think this is a big part of why men cheat. For the first time in however long, they feel genuinely desired, and I think it's like that for
Mm-hmm.
both men and women. I think that that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're almost hitting the refresh button on your ability to connect with another person romantically. If you've got a relationship that's got all this baggage in it, I mean, there's all this water under the bridge and these tensions between these two people who are trying. It's hard to cohabit with somebody. It's hard to share a life and responsibilities, and you can get weighed down by that. And here you meet somebody who doesn't see you as the the responsibilities you haven't fulfilled, or the ways that you've disappointed, or all the problems
Yeah.
that you have, and you're meeting someone who just sees you as fun and interesting and smart, and laughs at the jokes that you tell and doesn't criticize you. And I think that that can be an amazing experience. You can kind of get swept away in that. So I really can see that that would be a lot more than just the physical attractiveness. And I thought that the woman, the
Absolutely.
HR lady, was actually quite lovely. But um, yeah,
Well, yeah, see what you're saying, Leslie. I agree with that so much, and I have a great deal of sympathy for it, because it's terrible when you feel like your partner doesn't value you, that all they see are these flaws and a list of ways that you've failed them. And what happens too often in long-term relationships, I think, is people really stop seeing the good in each other, and they start just having so much resentment and reactivity to one another that
Yeah.
people can just lose their temper before you even open your mouth because they think they know what you're going to say.
Mm.
And it feels terrible. And sometimes we stop treating our spouses as humans, I think, and start taking all of, our frustrations and disappointments out on them. And um, it really kills things. That kills desire, for one.
Yeah, I'd also love to hear whether my biology is an excuse or something I'm supposed to transcend. This couldn't they couldn't help it because of biology is only accepted when it's convenient. It's a very interesting comment.
Well, I think if we are civilized, the civilized piece of that is how we transcend our biology in lots of ways, right? In lots and lots of ways. Like your biology may propel you to eat lots of sugar and fat because that's what's appealing to you, but your civilized self puts some kind of limits on that. You put some limits on
Hmm.
your eating habits, and your biology may lead you to, I don't know, expend the lower amounts of energy than you need to, but your civilization transcends that and tells you that you need to get so much exercise or do X, Y, Z. So I think that that goes for lots of areas of life, not just sexuality. Look at like Kohlberg's theory of moral stage development. You've got this pre-conventional state that we'd probably remain in if it weren't for the ways that we get civilized into more conventional and post-conventional levels of morality as we understand our responsibility to ourselves and the people around us. So I think that, yes, just that statement, we are, as human beings, one of the things that we believe is that we should transcend our biology in just about every way. I mean,
And then what
tell me if
happens
I'm
to the
wrong with
couple
that.
when no, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And also, what happens to the couple afterwards? Are you just expected to leave? Do you give another chance? Do you try to work it out? I mean, is one indiscretion or the level of what the affair was, how deep it was, how long it was going on? Is this somebody that's a cheater? I mean, there's so many components to whether or not you even choose to stay after something like that happens. Um, and I don't think it's an easy answer. I don't think you can say, well, this person had an affair on me and I'm leaving. I don't think it's that easy. I think there's a lot of complexity to relationships and to why it happened to begin with. And as you were saying, Jen, there could have been so many other, underlying, things there, like not being appreciated, not being, treated as a partner, not being treated as somebody that's desirable. I mean, all these components. So what do you do in that scenario? Do you stick it out and try to work it out, or do you just leave? I had a professor in my psychology program years and years ago, and I don't think I believe this, but he made a very interesting comment. He said people go to couples therapy to divorce, not to stay together.
Hmm.
And that was his particular belief system. And I think I argued against that in a paper I wrote for that class. Um, but there was something to that idea that by the time you reach that level of counseling or you reach that level of making a decision to to sleep with someone else or have an emotional affair or whatever type of affair, that there was something that was so broken it's not fixable. I think that was what he was getting at. Again, I don't necessarily believe that, but it was a very interesting way to look at what happens in relationships and why infidelity results and what people choose to do after that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I wouldn't say I agree with what he's saying either, but what I would say, as someone who provides couples therapy, is that often by the time people come in, the damage is so severe that it's much more difficult to work with than if they had shown up
Mm.
5 years earlier. I think people wait way too long. They see it as sort of you wait until you're really in trouble before you go to couples counseling. And I don't think that's the right way to think about it. The couples that do the best are people who are still completely madly in love, but just need somebody to sort of help them see each other's viewpoint.
Yes.
And they go in before a lot of damage gets done. And so they're both highly motivated to work on
Yes.
things no matter what it takes, and they do great and they really build a strong foundation. But if you wait until like you can barely stand the sight of your spouse to go in for couples work, you've really left it,
Yes.
you know,
I agree.
too late perhaps.
I agree.
It's very interesting.
But I think this is a great chat. I love to see all of the men in the chat today that are talking about there needing to be more in intimacy and connection to have a fulfilling sexual experience or relationship or, God forbid, affair. But I'm really impressed to see that. So I really appreciate those comments in the chat. We don't get to hear that a lot. I don't think it's it there. I think the stereotypes prevent us from being able to hear that it's not so different between with each person, with each gender. So,
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
and there's a difference between, I mean, when you're talking about how do people carry on, Christine, like how do you go forward? Do you keep trying? Um,
mhm,
do you leave? That's really difficult. There's a difference between the experience of someone whose partner had a love affair versus a partner who just had, I
mhm,
guess, a physical affair. There's something there
mhm,
as well. And there's
mhm,
different levels of infidelity and different incentives that
mhm,
might keep a person there. I know in my own experience, the first time I found out that my ex was um, cheating on me, it was it was always just physical. There's also this situation where someone has sort of a fetish or secrets that they don't share within their marriage that they seek outside. They seek fulfillment for outside of the relationship in transactional sexual encounters. And that's, I found when I found myself in that position as a partner, I found that there are a lot of people who have this experience, that a
mm,
partner has been chronically unfaithful, not seeking to replace the main partner or have love affairs or relational affairs, but actually just seeking a form of sexual fulfillment outside of the marriage. And that I mean, it's a really interesting analysis that has to happen at that point, because there's not necessarily anything that your partner could have done. It's not necessarily anything that could have relationally been contributed to by the partner that was cheated on. If there's an inherent dishonesty, secrecy, and sort of pleasure-seeking behavior that's happening, part of the fulfillment is often the clandestine nature of that. Part of what they're actually seeking is to
mhm,
do something in secret. So,
mhm.
um,
Yeah.
Well, and
yeah.
sometimes people have fetishes that they feel ashamed of and they don't want to tell their spouse. And
Hmm.
I'm not
Yeah.
and so they enact those fetishes outside of the marriage or relationship. But I'm not entirely sure why. I wonder what you guys think about this, like why the person with the fetish doesn't bring it up to their partner earlier in the relationship to see if their partner shares an interest in exploring that so that they can be linked up with someone where they can do that and they don't have to keep it a secret and go outside the relationship. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, I do, and I think that sometimes when you are dealing with a fetish or some other paraphilia, there's a really strong shame component in that for a lot of people, and it is something that's almost kept in the shadow for that individual. There's not a desire to bring that out and embrace it and integrate it. It's sort of compartmentalized. So if you were to bring that out and get your partner to help you integrate that or integrate that into your marriage, you would have to really look at that part of yourself. You'd have to really open yourself up to accepting that thing that you have a really difficult relationship with in the first place, because it's some of these things are developed really early on in a person's sexual development, or even adolescence, or earlier. They're exposed to something that sticks in them in a particular way, and they want to keep going and engaging and interacting with that, but it becomes almost a stress-based coping mechanism that builds, and it has sort of a rhythm to it that builds and then hits some kind of crescendo, and then they put it in the box for a while and it comes out, and it can be really linked to personal shame in a way that's hard to bring to your partner that wouldn't do the same thing if you did. And I'm curious, Christine or Deborah, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's interesting because, the idea of fetish and fetishism, I mean, it can go from being something that's brought into the relationship and that enhances a couple's, sexual relationship and desire and attraction to each other. It can go from that into kind of the perverse, right? So into kind of where now we've got somebody that maybe has a porn fetish and they become really addicted to not being able to have sex or climax if they're not watching porn. So I think that the fetish, I think that's also a complicated, component, the fetishism, because when does that become something that circumvents, what another person is comfortable with, like urinating on someone, for example, or defecating on someone. I'm talking about these really kind of outside of the box type fetishes. That's different from having maybe like a foot fetish. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now, about something like that. So I think that the conversations are important, and being able to listen and both bring your own, fantasies into the bedroom. Then I also think that can be taken a step too far, that can signify something else. That makes sense. I don't know if I was clear about that, but
So maybe sometimes somebody has a fetish, but they're uncomfortable with it and they're kind of grappling with it, and they're maybe hoping that it's going to sort of go away, so to speak, or become less prominent. So they're not going to bring it up to their partner because they value the relationship. They don't want to be rejected, or have their partner just sort of turned off to them. And they're thinking, well, maybe after a few years, I'm not going to need this. Things seem to be going well. And then they find out that it comes back up for them, and they find themselves feeling really compelled to enact it. It's
yes,
pretty easily understandable how that could happen.
yes. Deborah, do you have any thoughts?
No, I don't. I've been spacing out. I don't feel like I have that much to contribute to this, so I'm just kind of listening. But I was a little wandering in my mind, to be honest.
That's fine.
That's okay.
Perfectly
From
understandable.
one daydreamer to another.
Have you
Yes.
guys
Now I'm
ever
sitting here.
listened to Esther Perel at all?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
She's
I have
interesting. She's is she, I don't know if she's a psychologist or if she's just a counselor, but she's interesting, and she does a lot of couples work and has a snazzy haircut and an awesome accent. And she's got a couple of TED Talks, and I don't know if she still has it, but there was a podcast for a little while where you could listen to her talk to couples. She would bring in, and I guess she'd anonymize the couple that she's working with, but you'd get to listen to them lay out their presenting concerns, and then listen to her work through like an introductory session with them. Basically, it was really cool. She's really good. She's
Love
got this
that.
very, very intuitive nature and has a lot of awareness of patterns in men and women, and she worked with same-sex couples as well. So it's kind of just a really interesting opportunity to get a window into a good couples therapy. And she says this thing that I think is kind of interesting, that most people in our modern Western society will have 2 to 3 marriages in their lives, sometimes to the same person. That's how she puts it. Like So
Wow.
you have to think, when she's talking about recovery from infidelity, whether that's possible, that's the way she puts it. Like sometimes you have to think of it as almost beginning a new relationship with this person.
Negotiation.
Yeah, yeah.
You're starting over essentially. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And is it worth it? Like, I can remember when I was cheated on that first time, or when I made that discovery, I can't I can't use a word that will do it justice, because if I say devastated, we throw that word around a lot. And so it doesn't really feel like it
Yeah.
has the weight. I was so hurt. I was so hurt. I was, the grief was almost unbearable, and it crushed me. I had a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old, and I was in love with my husband. And I found out he'd been cheating on me since before we even conceived the baby. So it'd gone on since our older son was little. And it was like my entire world was ripped apart. And deciding how to go forward. Do I try to forgive and give another chance? Or do I cut loose here? That was a really, really, really difficult time. And I found her work during that time, and I listened to some of the things she said. And I mean, I went on and to have 8 more years in that relationship, and then it all happened again. So you can tell me, was it a good bet or not? I don't know, but it was how you live your life. I learned a lot about forgiveness. I learned a lot about myself. I learned about the limits of forgiveness, what you hold back, how you
Yeah.
listen to another person, how you trust, how you form relationship. And I just think it's a really tender and personal issue all around. You know, you're both people who are grappling with something at that point. You're both people who have your struggles. It's not it's seldom one-sided, these kinds of things. Crickets.
I'm just thinking, and I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't come off as insensitive to somebody's experience, but so I'm just going to throw it out there, and please pardon me if it's not well stated. But I'm also thinking that not all infidelity is created equal. There are some things that people do in the course of infidelity that can be much more destructive. If you compare something like a one night stand out of town on a business trip, maybe a little too much wine, regret, and never happens again, the damage is kind of contained. If you look at long term, and maybe then the person
Yeah.
starts making financial decisions that go along with that. Maybe the person loots your life savings or something, or when there's more kind of widespread severe damage, it's much harder to come back from that, and it creates much more of a feeling of I think unreality in the person that was betrayed. Like, I literally thought our life was this, and it's this other thing. And then you start to wonder what else in your life appears one way but is another. So I do think that there's some forms of infidelity, particularly prolonged, or if there's other things that go along with it, other high risk behaviors, it does much more damage.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. It's different to have this accidental one night stand and the regret, and that's much different than having like you said, a really full on deep and connected, emotional sexual affair with somebody that's impacted your relationship, I mean, pretty much everything you said, Jennifer.
Yeah.
I second that. And I think that has to be looked at too, because I was talking about this actually yesterday with a friend of mine. What we would do. I've been married for 2 years, so not long, but I've been with my partner for 8. So it's been about 9, yeah, 8 or 9 years, so almost 10. Um, but the closer that I think we are, moving through this life together, and the longer the partnership is there, I don't think I would necessarily just say you've had an affair and now I'm done. It would really have to be what the depth of that affair was, how long that's been going on. Are you actually in love with this person? And if you had asked me this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I wasn't so intertwined, when my life wasn't so intertwined with somebody else's, I was very rigid. My answer would be absolutely not. If there's one indiscretion, it is absolutely over. And I think that's just a lot of growth and maturity in relationships that I've made
Yeah.
in my current relationship that's gotten me to that point of understanding that these things are more complicated than that. And if I put
Right.
myself in those shoes, I don't know that I would necessarily just walk out. I
Yeah.
don't know that that's the decision I would make. 15 years ago, yes, not today. But I'm also,
Yeah.
in my mid 40s now, I'm not 25. So things are different. And yeah, infidelity is a symptom and not an event itself. It never happens in a vacuum. Swiss chalet. I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. I think if you find out, something about your partner that's really disturbing, like if you found out your partner had spent all their money, all the the family money on hookers and strippers, there's a more intractable problem than somebody who has an indiscretion that they
Yes.
regret. And so
Yes.
to me, it's all, I also look at it in terms of, well, is there a pathway forward that is likely to be successful? Or is the destruction going to perhaps continue and get worse? And I now have to, protect myself from this person financially and emotionally, because a lot of people find themselves in that position too.
That's right.
This is interesting
Absolutely.
from Brandon Bergian. I think male infidelity falls into two general types. One, addicts and guys with broken attachment styles, or two, normal guys who feel chronically undesired. It's interesting. Interesting.
I'm curious if there's a third. I just thought of a potential third category, and I don't know if this is true in terms of the midlife crisis. I mean, maybe I don't know if that is or isn't a thing, but I was wondering, like, starting to feel like maybe loss of virility, or like I'm aging, things are getting stale. Is that so? Let's ask the guys out there. Like, is there anything to like a midlife crisis? I need to feel because of that. I need to sort of feel desirable, and I'm going outside, or is that overhyped as a thing?
Yeah, those are sort
Anyone
of, I
want?
think, existential issues, really deeper issues. I think that exists in both men and women. You sort of
so,
realize your own mortality and think, oh shit.
Yeah, well, and I think that with human connection, there's each connection is its own singular thing, and sometimes you meet someone that you really click with, and it can feel really. I mean, like if you have an emotion-based or a connection-based affair with someone, we've all met someone in our lives, whether it's friendship, like another woman or another man, or we see the quality of our connections vary. Sometimes you just get a very powerful feeling for the person that you're with, like this clicks. And I can understand how if you're at this point where things are stale and routine, and you find that click with someone who is of the opposite sex or someone that you'd be attracted to, there's a really powerful temptation there for anybody. So I guess that comes back to that attraction thing. If the click is based on how beautiful you find somebody, your aesthetics, then that could be part of the picture for men or women. Let's see, Cody R. responds and says, I think the midlife crisis thing is overhyped in regards to being something you mainly see in men.
I would agree with that. I would
Swiss
absolutely
Shelley
agree.
Absolutely.
Every time a man or woman decides to commit adultery, she has weighed at that moment like a scale what she is gaining versus giving up. If what is being given up is not adequate, then I don't know. I think that can be quite skewed.
I don't know, because I don't think that people are thinking that carefully. Some people might be, but I think there's also such a headiness to
Impulsiveness.
becoming attracted to somebody, and impulsivity, and the whole Freudian concept of compulsive repetition. I think it's really quite true. People are acting things out almost unconsciously, and they're not really thinking about it and what they might be losing. And I'm not saying this in any way to make excuses for hurtful behavior on anybody's part, but I mean, who feels completely in control of themselves and weighs all of their decisions in life all the time? I've never met such a person, and I am not that person myself.
No.
Well, when
No.
people say the pros and cons, like someone's like, I'm going to make a list and put the pros and ones.
Yeah,
Who, when
no.
they had an affair, did a pros and cons
Yes.
list?
Yes.
Like a
That is
ledger.
a good point.
Yeah. Let's see. Cody R. says, I remember something that my ex-wife said, which massively creeped me out. She was at work looking at teenage girls and said to herself under her breath, I'm not the young, pretty one anymore. I can remember so I had my daughters when I was young. I was 19 and 21 when they were born. So I had teenagers when I was in my early 30s, and early to mid 30s. So I was still, young and pretty. And here, I remember the first time it happened, we were walking through a Target when I realized that, young women are always aware of people looking at them. They just are. They go through the world and everybody's looking at them. I realized that there were people who were looking at my girls and no longer looking at me. And that was a weird moment. Like, these guys would check out my daughters and I would walk by kind of invisibly. That was a strange thing. So I kind of, I don't know about your wife or your ex-wife, but that is a little bit relatable to me to kind of realize that. Yeah, Brandon Bergian says, Cody makes a great point. Maybe there's a female version of the midlife crisis related to the perceived loss of beauty. Having steamy sex with a personal trainer might be downstream from that.
Oh God, that's so funny. Yeah, the whole menopause thing is very jarring to the system. So I just don't think that can be overstated enough. But the thing is, though, with a lot of women during menopause, they lose their interest in sex, and maybe it doesn't get acted out that way, but it's definitely a major life crisis.
Pre-menopause, right? Like, my mom once told me that women are never more pretty than in their late 30s and early 40s, and I thought, that's weird. I don't believe that. But then I've started to kind of agree with her a little bit. There's this thing that happens for a lot of women near the end of their fertile life cycle, when they are really, really achingly beautiful. And I wonder if there's sort of a biological psychological, maybe evolutionary psychology at play here, that might give you a burst of, this is your last chance, Like, I wonder if that sort of might be, if you could map this out and see any kind of a pattern that happens for women when, they used to say that women hit their sexual peak in their late 30s, right? You remember hearing that? I was not taught that in school, but I've heard that culturally for a long time.
I did. I definitely did.
Student of Rhythm says late 30s to early 40s equals hot.
Love it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Love it.
Where's the spirituality here? It's absent, Swiss Chalet says. Is that about this conversation? I don't know. What do you guys think about this from a spiritual angle?
I'm not sure how as relates to the people being unfaithful. I'm not sure what the
Yeah, I don't
how
know
the
either.
context that's in. Yeah.
I don't know either. I don't know. Oh, that's nice. Morning Cigar. I've met 89-year-old women who are off the charts beautiful. It's a strange anomaly. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. I know exactly what he means. Yeah, there's some older people that are so mind-bogglingly, transcendently beautiful that if you've seen photos of Georgia O'Keeffe when she was old, I have a giant, giant canvas of her, a photograph of her over my bed when she was old, and she's just staggeringly gorgeous.
Swiss Chalet says confusion.
Mm-hmm.
LOL. There you go. Well, why don't you just give us a little bit more information on what you're looking for? Because I think that there's plenty of spiritual angles to discuss, but we don't know what you're really looking at here.
I don't know if he's looking for maybe some moral commentary on this painful phenomenon of affairs, and
Yeah,
I don't think we're trying to moralize about it. I think we're trying to first to understand it a bit more.
I think so too.
Sure.
Yeah. Marwar says, "Don't make excuses for adultery." And then Brandon Bergian says, "Spiritual angle. I think there's a role transition that women are offered. They go from sexy desire object to community organizer and caretaker. And many resist this. It takes humility. And I think that that's a really interesting point. There's this way that Mary Harrington talks about this that I think is really cool. One of my favorite places to hear this discussed was a conversation she had on Jordan Peterson's podcast about a year or two ago. And she talks about the transition, the 3-part female journey from maiden to mother to matriarch or crone. And I know I've talked about this before with you guys, but I find that very compelling. There's something there that the process of moving through your life where you're viewed very differently and people act very differently towards you depending on what stage of your life you're in. It has a big impact. And that resisting the move from one to the other is a part of, gosh, here I'm like, how do I articulate this thought that I'm having? I feel like a lot of life is about walking through doors, like crossing thresholds. There's a lot of points in life when you're offered a choice, or you must go forward, and we focus on what we're leaving behind, and we mourn what we leave. Like I'll put this in a concrete, I guess, metaphor here. We just moved. We moved from one part of Washington State to another. It's really different here. We left behind a lot of things. Thinking about moving was really exciting, but also really painful and bittersweet, thinking about the things you'd leave behind. And there was a point during that process when we're packing up that I was just in a state of really deep grief over the things that I was going to be leaving behind, all the situations that wouldn't, closing my office, leaving our homeschool group, leaving this beautiful place where I'd lived for 15 years. And then you cross the threshold, and now you're in the new space, and you're in a space of newness and creation, and there's not as much room for that grief. But I think that there's that role transition that Brandon is talking about is really, I think that's really well put. What he's saying is that there can be a resistance to that transition in life. And women definitely do go through a transition. All the, middle-aged and old, dowdy women that used to be the young, cute women who were getting all the attention and getting all kinds of admiration and praise. And that's a thing that we all kind of have to grapple with at some point in our life, unless we're Jennifer Friend, in which case we just stay gorgeous forever. And, don't know how that works, but
I do think there is that transition, the whole maiden mother crone thing, and I'm thoroughly enjoying the crone phase of my life.
because
And
you
at the
still
same
look like
time,
the maiden. I'm sorry.
I do not. I
Yes, you
do
do.
not. But I still feel like you can be sexually vibrant and alive and also generative in other ways in your life, hopefully in a way that does something to maybe improve the lives of other people, even if it's just people in your small circle. I think you can do both and be both. And I think sexuality at different phases of life and beauty and virility is just different. And I don't think it doesn't exist. I just don't think you can compare like a 60-year-old woman to a 20-year-old woman and expect that they should be the same, or that the 60-year-old isn't beautiful or handsome. They're just beautiful or handsome in a different way. To me, it's apples to oranges. And I know I have weird sensibilities about that, and most people don't feel that way, but that is genuinely how I feel.
Yeah, Student of Rhythm responds to the comment about making excuses for adultery, and says, understanding why something happens isn't making excuses, it's preparing to confront the motivations and incentives and not succumb to them.
Exactly. I appreciate that. That's what I'm trying to do. And I said earlier, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I just feel like for me right now, I've had some really, really bad stuff happen to me, in the past couple of years. And it kind of blew my world wide open. And I just, thank you, Student of Rhythm. I just really have a craving to understand people. And through that, I feel like I understand myself more. And it helps me to make meaning of this human experience. And it also helps me to feel much more compassionate and to take things less personally, because most of the times when we get hurt, it really doesn't have a lot to do with us. It's something else the other person's struggling with. And I just want to understand.
Yeah. Swiss Chalet says, is this really something you focus on all day? Attractiveness in youth?
Definitely not.
No,
Well,
it's a big no.
and yet this
No.
is part of human nature. And in trying to understand the forces that underlie our lives and how we move through time, it comes up. I mean, this is definitely came up as part of the very beginning of the conversation, the way that people responded online when they thought that the cheater had a young, attractive wife at home versus, a woman more close to his own age who was maybe not
Right.
as attractive as the woman that he cheated with. It makes a difference in how people conceptualize this stuff. So,
Yeah, which is kind of shitty if people think, oh, well, his wife is his age. Who can blame him? I mean, it's a kind of dehumanizing way of looking at people. And for some reason, people are much more caught up on women's aging and what the changes women have in their bodies than in men's bodies. Like guys are what? They're caught in some kind of time warp where they stay 20 forever. They most certainly do not.
no, but unlike
But it's
women, a man who's about 40 has more relationship capital than a woman about that age.
Do you think so? I just feel like I've never experienced I don't know, man.
I don't know, when it comes to individuals, individual variation
Yeah.
is more subtle perhaps, but on the cultural level we see that reflected in us in all kinds of ways, you know? And it makes sense too that a man who has had the opportunity to become established in a field off, and he has a pattern of stability in his life that he can show for himself is an attractive partner for a lot of women. Whereas for
I
women,
yeah.
having flexibility and having fertility and being pretty, those are very attractive, and you would see that more with younger women. So I see that split. However, I also had the experience when I was in my mid 20s of dating someone who was almost 20 years older than me. And those aspects of his being settled and stable and financially stable, all those things were nice, but I always wished he was younger. I would have liked him to have been younger. The age thing bothered me, so it wasn't like a really appealing thing that he was in his 40s. I would have been thrilled to have found those kinds of qualities in a man closer to my own age.
My husband has been married before me, so he's divorced. This is my first marriage. And something that was really important to me, he has a daughter as well. Something that was really important to me was how he talked about his marriage and his ex-wife and how he co-parented with her. Those were things that told me a lot about his character. And he was in his mid 40s. I was in my mid 30s. So he's 10 years older than me. But that to me became so much more important than, whether or not, I mean, how handsome he was or, what he did for a living. I don't know, these generic kind of, cliche things. What mattered to me was how he was able to have relationships and have a relationship with his ex in order to co-parent properly, and what he did at the end of his marriage. Did he have an affair? He didn't. He didn't when their marriage was falling apart. That's not. I don't know if he'd even want me to be sharing this, but I mean, when his marriage was falling apart, that's not the direction he went in, and that to me was a big piece of whether or not I wanted to continue dating him and I wanted to continue in a relationship with him, because it's not the way he chose to solve a problem. There were other things that they had tried, and there were other reasons that it didn't work out. That to me mattered a whole lot more, than any of the other components. Would I have wanted to be with somebody that had never been married before? Probably. But at the end of the day, I felt as though he had the relationship capital, to kind of go back to a phrase one of the two of you used, that made it a much more enriching experience for me and for us together. Um, Thank you. That's very kind.
That's nice.
That's very, very sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, another thing that's interesting about this whole situation, I know we just have a couple minutes left, but the couple being exposed at the Coldplay concert is that with the way that things get amplified over social media, you have these two people being kind of they end up representing all of this and receiving the brunt of all of this criticism and these feelings, where so many people have been in the situations that they're in, and maybe, like, as someone who's been on the receiving end of adultery, on the cheated innocent spouse side, if you will, of adultery, maybe it would have been satisfying to have everybody in the world, the whole public, rise up and criticize my ex for his yucky behavior. But at the same time, it wouldn't have felt very good for everybody to have been commenting on my looks and how valid it was for him to be cheating on me. You know,
That's
like,
right.
oh, if you were prettier,
That's right.
maybe it would have been more, I don't know, you know, we would be more
Yes.
sorry for you, but you're an old dumpy woman and you must not have been giving him what he wanted. So there's plenty of criticism and spotlighting that goes around to the HR woman for not being pretty and young enough to be worth cheating with, to the guy for being a sleaze to cheat on his wife, for, you know, all of these things. And their husband and wife get the public commentary as well. So the whole spotlighting and public scrutiny aspect of this kind of goes to what you were talking about, Deborah, the privacy issues behind some of these things.
Yeah. I feel sorry for everybody involved, and I hope they all come out of it okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading the
May we not
comments here.
become memes. Just want to just avoid being a meme.
Yeah, right. It's a new prayer. It's a modern day prayer.
Yeah.
May we not become memes.
Clue Studio says, to be fair to them, who actually goes to a Coldplay concert? They actually thought they had
That's just
privacy.
brilliant comment.
Yeah, Swiss Chalet says, why get married in the first place? Oh, that's a bleak thought, huh?
Oh,
Bleak thought.
because I can answer that.
Okay.
I'm the marrying kind. I don't know how people avoid it. I mean, to me, it's like you fall in love with somebody, it's you just want to marry them. It's like if you don't, it feels like there's this next step that you
Mm-hmm.
didn't take that's
Mm-hmm.
always hanging out there. It's not that I would feel incomplete within myself, but it feels like in that relationship, it's like it's hanging out there. There's this next step you could have taken together that you didn't take. Why? And what does that say? And why wouldn't you just go all the way if you're crazy in love with somebody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think women and
I don't
men,
know. I'm a
they
romantic
just,
sap, though. Don't take advice from me.
Ray says, I love being married. I think we just see it
Yes.
at our basic fundamental nature, and there's always going to be variation there, but generally speaking, a woman wants a man to help complete her and to be her partner, and a man wants a woman to help complete him and be his partner. I think we gravitate toward one another.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like I said before, just the growth that I've experienced having a partner in my life, and we have a bit of another situation with inheriting a stepdaughter and what that comes with, and all of that. But I feel more grounded as a person. I feel as though I've grown a lot more as a person in general. And I don't know if that would have happened. Again, I've only been married a short time, but I've been living with my partner for 8 years before we got married. So it was almost like we were in a marriage. Not that much changed when we got married, quite frankly. We were already living that way. So, so this has been a journey for many years now. And it has provided some grounding and some feeling of, somebody's got my back and I've got somebody else's back. And that's really important to me. I know other people in relationships, like family, can provide that too, to an extent, but there's a certain kind of intimacy between a married couple and having each other's backs out there in the world that I think's really desirable to me. And I think that I've gained a lot from, and I think I've provided a lot too.
Yeah, there's a couple of comments. Maybe this is something to discuss in the future. Brandon Bergian says, "You'd be horrified how many millennial women are completely ambivalent about marriage and family." Swiss Chalet says, "I've been married for over 26 years. Cannot understand why people cannot figure out how to get along within their marriage." Yeah, that's the purpose of conversations like this, is to try to try to find understanding, for sure, even though it's
Yeah.
really complex. And
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and David LeBoy says marriage is a terrible risk for men these days. So that's interesting too. I think it's a terrible
Not,
risk
no,
for,
it's not
for men
without
and
risk
for
for
women.
women. I think it's a risk for both parties. Huge risk.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is a massive risk, and that's maybe that speaks back to that sense of ambivalence. Mr. Pig, that's a cute name. I miss the amazing stability of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Aww.
yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Go on the dating app.
Oh gosh.
Oh boy. All right, folks, I have to
I'm
jump because I
Okay.
advertising for it.
have an 11 o'clock, so I got to
All
jump.
right.
But it was good to see everybody
Yeah.
today. So thank you all so much.
Good to see
as
you too,
always.
Christine. We'll see you
Me
next week.
too.
And
Sounds
Nice
good.
seeing everyone.
and we have to go too. But Sour Kiwi says I'm getting married next month, so I just want to say
Oh,
congratulations.
congratulations!
That's awesome.
Mazel tov!
Wonderful.
Whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Okay, well, Deborah's out, and Jen, it's just you and me. We'll wrap up. Thanks for a good chat.
All right. Yes, thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. This is super fun.
Bye.